Start seeing possibilities, what mindset really is, and why it runs everything. Do you ever feel, and I bet you do, like you're working so hard, but something in your own head keeps holding you back?
I have very holistic emotions. My approach is to figure out new change and go in day. I'm grateful to you a lot more.
And I'm going to tell you a lot more.
And some framework that I could help you achieve.
Yeah, we're going to share some of Sourena's thoughts on mindsets, including his 5-step approach to creating the kind of mindset you need to deal with your challenges and be as successful as you can so you maximize your potential.
Take it away, Chris.
I'll take it away. These videos are a collaboration. Sourena, who has cerebral palsy, develops the written material and I present it on camera. Most people share one goal, right? We all want to accomplish our dreams, but almost everybody has that mental block that keeps them from chasing what they actually want. Sourena was born with cerebral palsy. His body and his brain don't communicate well. It affects every aspect of his life. He uses a wheelchair. He has limited control of his muscles. He has a speech impediment. He depends on other people for help in a lot of different areas in his life. Actually, almost everything. And still, he never stopped dreaming big. So today, I'm going to break down Sourena's approach to mindset, what it actually is, the popular frameworks around it, and the 5 keys that Sourena has not only built, but executed in his own life to achieve amazing success, and we're going to share that with you. What mindset actually is? Mindset is one of those words that we hear all the time. It tends to be thrown around. It's something that you see on a motivational poster, right? Like, get your head in the game, or the millionaire mindset. You know, we hear those things, and by the way, they sound great. The problem is, there's nothing you can actually do with that. Therefore, it really has nothing to do with mindset. But Sourena has a very specific definition of mindset. It's a holistic approach to personal development, growth, and goal achievement. That is how Sourena defines mindset. So keep that in mind as we go through what we're talking about today, right? But it's about how you go after your goals, how you deal with challenges, how you interact with people, and basically how you move throughout every single day. It also means taking responsibility for your life and not letting circumstances run your life, right? Sourena, as we said, was born with cerebral palsy. It's awful. It affects every aspect of his life. And although it's not his fault, not by any means, it's still his responsibility. So part of that mindset for Sourena was to accept it, not to like it, but to accept that reality, but then take responsibility for reality. And despite that, figure out ways to go and accomplish his goals anyway. And that's reflected in Sourena's company tagline, which is start seeing possibilities. The 3 elements of mindset. The first are general principles. These are the principles that Sourena shares with audiences all over the world, and that's general principles like discipline, focus, diligence, personal responsibility, right? These are values that can be adapted and adopted on the approach to any goal, right? The second is the mindset of a very specific goal, right? Each goal calls for its own system of action, right? Thinking, thoughts, habits, right? What works for one person's rituals for a particular goal might not necessarily work for another's. While there is some crossover, you've got to see these again as every goal requires a very specific mindset. What really matters is just consistency, not the ritual itself. And the third is the mindset of your challenges. And this was a big one for Sourena because he faces all the challenges that all of us face in our daily lives on top of dealing with all the challenges that come with his cerebral palsy, right? But there's no success without challenges. Sourena will always tell you that. And oftentimes, though, what holds you back is not the challenge itself. It's just not understanding the challenge and how to deal with that. For years, when Sourena was younger, he thought, well, I'm being held back because I have cerebral palsy. Then he realized, no, that's not it. While that may be a challenge, it's me accepting this and then figuring out how to deal with all the things associated with. So once he developed that mindset, he was able to accomplish some pretty amazing things. But you know, no matter what you're facing, somebody somewhere has already found a way to break through that challenge. Victim mindset versus aspirational mindset. This is another one of those things that's really important, something that Sourena figured out a long time ago. But a victim mindset is blaming outside forces. And by the way, it's easy and it's comfortable, right? We feel like it's not our fault, but we're going to blame other things. Like Sourena could just blame the cerebral palsy. In our lives, we could blame the economy, we could blame politics, we could blame social factors for the reason we're not where we want to be, right? That's the victim mentality. And guess where that gets you? Nowhere. So what Sourena will encourage you to do is develop an aspirational mindset as opposed to a victim mindset. An aspirational mindset ties into what we've been talking about. It's taking as much responsibility as possible for everything and thinking beyond those current circumstances, because that gives you power. A victim mentality, victim mindset steals your power, while an aspirational mindset gives you the power you need to deal with challenges, right? If you lack a skill, work on it, develop it. If you lack a connection, go out there and find the connections you need. Develop those connections. If you don't have knowledge, become a student and continually learn. You know, when Sourena decided to write his first book, he didn't know where to start. He had never written a book before, but you know what he did? So he didn't have those skills. He didn't have that knowledge. But he developed it. He had that aspirational mindset, right? He learned how to write. He learned how to put together a keynote. He learned how to start a YouTube channel, how to put together courses and coaching and all of those things that at one point he had no idea how to do because he maintained that aspirational mindset, as opposed to a victim mindset, thinking, you know what, I have cerebral palsy and I don't have the knowledge or skills to ever do these things that I kind of think about doing. He had that aspirational mindset, and that was crucial for his success. Tying in closely to that is a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. You know, Carol Dweck, who's a Stanford researcher who wrote a book called Mindset, which is an incredible book, one of my favorites, and I know one of Sorena's favorites. But basically, it boils down to this: growth mindset, fixed mindset. You can tell by the way they're named. A fixed mindset, you believe things are the way they are, right? You're born with a certain amount of potential. You are who you are. You really, no matter what happens, are just kind of where you're at, right? Can you learn a little? Sure, but not necessarily. You're kind of just who you are. Growth mindset, as you can imagine, is the opposite. It's the belief that as long as we put in some effort, we can accomplish anything we want. Now, it's easy to see which one of those mindsets is going to propel you forward towards your goals. It's that growth mindset, right? Growth mindset is so key. And some of the things that go with that growth mindset is, if you've got a fixed mindset and you see a challenge, you don't believe you can deal with that challenge because you are who you are, right? That's a fixed mindset. But with a growth mindset, you see a challenge, and even if you fall short, that's an opportunity to learn, grow, and go back at it again, right? With a fixed mindset, we compare ourselves to other people. Well, I'll never be as smart as that person, or as successful as that person, or as talented as that person. But a growth mindset, we don't compare. A growth mindset, we're inspired by others because we know we can develop it if we just work hard enough. So we see other people and we say, I want to be like that. I want to accomplish similar things. And I know that if I work hard, I can do that. But the bottom line is, at the end of the day, and by the way, these aren't binary. It's not like you're all fixed, you're all growth. They can change depending on what aspect of your life you're looking at. But you've got to check yourself. Are you finding yourself stuck in a fixed mindset? And you've got to open up and work on developing that growth mindset. Why your brain fights you. And this is a really important thing to understand when it comes to mindset, because your brain really can be one of your greatest assets if you have the right mindset, but also it can be one of your biggest enemies, because your brain on the physiological level is not built for success, right? It was built to survive and stay comfortable, right? So it'll prioritize comfort over growth and safety and uncertainty, and it'll resist change, whether it's good or bad, because that brings uncertainty, right? Our survival mechanisms just want things to be safe. So when there's a challenge or anything that's outside of our comfort zone, our brain naturally pushes us away from that, even though that's what it might take to actually grow and accomplish your goals, right? Most habits live in the subconscious for efficiency's sake, but the trade-off is bad habits slip in just as easily as the good ones. You know, and one other thing, just thinking about how your brain fights you is, you know, it's easier to grab your phone and scroll than grab a book to actually learn, because you've got to be focused. You've got to pay attention. You know, it's easier to complain about something than actually go out and do something. Or it's easier to avoid a challenge than actually try to deal with it. But you need to deal with challenges. You need to learn. You need to grow. You need to be a little bit uncomfortable. So that's where you've got to work on, make sure that even though your brain is fighting you, you understand it, you accept it, and then you figure out how to deal. Remember, the brain loves the path of least resistance. So why mindset matters? I think you've got a good gist of it by what we've discussed so far today, but mindset is your operating system for your life, right? It's the basis of every decision you make all through the day, and you make thousands of decisions, whether you realize it or not, every single day. So it's what's providing you direction. And the question is, the type of mindset you have is the type of direction you're going to get, right? But success was never about, a dollar amount or a title. Without satisfaction and joy, it just doesn't mean that much at all, right? And there's no finish line, right? You have to build and connect with joy no matter where you currently stand. You hear it all the time when it comes to success that the goalpost continually moves. And that's true, and that's okay, right? You set a goal, you accomplish it, but then what? Now you've got another goal, and that goalpost keeps moving. So to Sorena's point, if you don't find joy and satisfaction in the journey, and that's part of having that correct mindset, you're never going to fully feel satisfied or be happy. So based on all of this information, Sorena's put together what he calls the 5 keys to an amazing mindset. And again, I think one of the very special things about Sourena is that this is all things he's done. This aren't ideas and theories and, oh, that sounds cool. This is what he did to be a person with cerebral palsy that affects every aspect of his life to achieve amazing success, right? So Sourena has kind of boiled this down to 5 keys. First, rewrite your narrative. Tell yourself a better story. Then improve your processes and habits, right? As you improve those, you're going to have more success in your daily life. Then, as you know, dealing with challenges, right? Accepting that the challenges are there and then figuring out ways to deal with it. On top of that, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, which is what it takes to accomplish goals, build strategic relationships. Go out and seek those win-win relationships that help propel you forward. And finally, the 5th, gain clarity. You've got to be crystal clear. Not I have an idea of a goal or a thought of a goal or a blurry vision, but crystal clear about what you're trying to accomplish. And this isn't a one-time exercise. This is an approach you need to apply to your life on a day-to-day basis, right? Because at the end of the day, what you put into your life ultimately is what shapes it, right? Not a perfect correlation, but over enough decisions, it moves the odds and improves them in your favor. So mindset won't remove every obstacle in front of you. What it does is change how you meet those obstacles and changes everything else downstream. So remember, you got to understand what mindset is. Remember those 3 elements. Remember the victim mindset versus the aspirational mindset, the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. And remember that your brain can try to resist you and oftentimes will. And when you remember all of those and you combine those with the 3 keys that we just talked about, you're going to be on the road to achieving some pretty amazing things. So after all of this, Sourena wants to know, which of the 5 keys do you need to work on the most right now? Please share those in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, and I'm sure that you did, make sure you like it, share it, and most importantly, subscribe to this channel.